All right, guys. Let's go ahead and get started. We've got, let's call it a quorum. We're going to see some folks, I'm sure, rolling in over the next few minutes as we continue to get started. But I wanted to go ahead and tee up the conversation today. We've got some folks from Inmar here to talk us through consumer promotions. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome Bill and Sarah. Bill is Senior Advisor Services Manager at Inmar, and Sarah is a Solutions Expert Director. So I'm going to go ahead and tee it up to them. Guys, as we go through this presentation, please use the Q&A section to ask your questions, and we will try to kind of collate them and answer them in blocks or at the very end of the presentation. All right, Bill and Sarah, over to you guys.
Thanks, Peter. And we're happy to be here today. And hi, Sarah.
Hi, Bill.
And hi, everybody who's joined. Thanks for joining today. Before we get started, Peter, I just want to make sure, Sarah, can you see the presentation properly up on the screen?
Yes, I can.
Great. So thanks again, everybody who's joined. We've got what will hopefully be an informative and fun presentation today. But before we start, we've got a couple of things. First, we need to put up a disclaimer. And so here, this slide is announcing the pending arrival of our actual disclaimer slide, and here it is. And so basically what this says is that we are not giving any legal advice, that this presentation is not packaged for individual sale, and that 9 out of 10 dentists recommend sugarless gum for their patients who chew gum. So now that you know that we are not legally allowed to give legal advice, let's move on to our actual presentation. Sarah, what are we gonna talk about today?
Yeah, absolutely, Bill. Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about the 500 questions to ask yourself before running a promotion. For the next 3 hours, buckle up because cancel your meetings. We're going to be talking about excruciating details.
Wait, Sarah, we talked about this. Remember they gave us an hour?
Oh, only an hour? All right, I guess we can make that work.
Let's try again.
Okay, let's try this again. So we're actually only going to be talking about the 5 questions. You're welcome. So for the next hour, we're going to be going over some things to think about that can help lead to a more successful coupon promotions. Does that, Bill, sound more reasonable to you?
Yes, I think that's better. I think it was tough to pick just 5, and hopefully we've got the right ones, and we'll roll with it and see what happens. And thanks for bearing with our silly joking, but let's before we get going, let's just set the stage. Sarah, we both work within the fintech division of Inmar. Can you take just a second to tell people what that is so they kind of understand where we're coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to level set, we have 40 years of experience as a trusted financial partner. If you're joining us for the first time and haven't worked with us, welcome. If you've worked with us over the course of the last several decades, thank you so much for joining us again. We process 4.5 billion annually, and we have 1,200 customers across North America. At the very core of what we do is we really look at facilitating complex financial transactions and applying data and analytics to make those more actionable for our customers. And it's actually very timely because I know, Bill, you know a thing or two about taking very complex data sets and making them actionable for customers from your years sitting on our advisory team. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So yeah, I'm part of Inmar's advisory service team. I've been working in this space for over 20 years. And the advisory services team, our first and main focus is working directly with CPG brands and marketers to help them figure out where they should be promoting, how they should be promoting, to figure out how to best spend their funds, how to optimize, target, establish KPIs, maximize their ROI, reduce their workload, a lot of things that we're going to be talking about today. And so we work directly, it's a team that works in sort of a consultative advisory function with many CPG brands. And we've been doing this for a long time. Our team also analyzes and produces industry trends and stats, publications and such on what's going on with CPG coupon distribution and redemption, different coupon methods, redemption rates, values, all kinds of things. And we also conduct annual and monthly shopper surveys, talking to regular grocery shoppers and understanding, a lot of things about what they're doing, including their coupon and promotion preferences and usage. And we'll be referencing some of those stats today here in this presentation. And Sarah, that actually leads us nicely into our last intro slide before we get started.
Yes, absolutely. And we welcome everyone on the call to join us again for an upcoming webinar that we have. And Bill's also going to be guest speaking and introducing some of our industry trends, along with Carrie Hawkins, who's our business development director. And what we're going to cover are how coupon distribution has shifted over the past 3 years. So we're actually going to take a look back. And we're also going to take a look into the future and see how shoppers are responding in the market currently and what the implications can be for future planning purposes. So at the end of the webinar, we're going to have a QR code so that you're welcome to register and join us again on April 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So now that we've covered all of the propaganda, I think, Bill, we can go ahead and get started.
Great.
So today what we're going to cover are 5 key questions. We're going to be able to answer by the end of the webinar. Why am I running this promotion? What does success look like? Which promotion method makes the most sense? How much should the offer be worth? And lastly, to round things out, we're going to talk about when is the best time to run the offer.
Right. And while some of these on the surface may seem very basic or obvious, you may be asking yourself, like, why am I attending this? These things are so simple and foundational and obvious, but you'd be surprised how many brands and marketers overlook or give little thought to some or all of these. And they can really end up making the wrong decisions. You can end up making poor decisions. On the flip side of that, you can make better decisions if you understand these and really drive performance. And what I want to point out, this is very important. As much as we'd love to be able to tell each person who's listening exactly what they should do, give them, an exact formula or science that they can walk away with and then go create the perfect offer later this afternoon. That's just, it's not possible. There are so many variables. Every brand is different. Every promotion is different. And as we talked to today, there's so many variables and things that can impact that. So what we're doing today, though, is just talking about these and why they're important to consider and give folks who maybe don't have as much experience running offers some guidance down the path of running more successful offers. Or even if you have experience, you may not think through some of these things, or they just may be a good reminder of how to go about some of this stuff.
Absolutely. So I think, Bill, that leads us nicely into the first point. So let's just jump right in.
Sure.
So let's first talk about why we're running promotions. And it kind of seems almost too on the nose, a little bit simple and easy. In your opinion, do you think this is a little bit too obvious, or how should we think about this, Bill?
Maybe not in terms of being obvious. I mean, let me flip it back around on you and let me ask you this. Why would a brand run a promotion? What's the motivation for running? Is there a single motivation for running a promotion?
Good question. Good question. And I do know the answer, but quite often we hear things like to discount a product so that people will buy more, or because my competitors are doing it.
And those are valid reasons, but they're definitely not the only reasons. And if you're only thinking along those lines, you're probably going to make some mistakes. So there's definitely more to it than that. Right off the bat, setting objectives is going to be key. And in order to set objectives, first you have to have an objective, and that can seem silly, but your objective probably just shouldn't be, I need to run a coupon promotion because that's what brands do, or that's what my competitors are doing. So what are objectives? How do you set them? And there are different types of goals in running a promotion. There are brand goals, shopper goals, maybe retailer goals. So, I mean, among brand goals, some of the basic ones are driving trial or household penetration. Or maybe you want to move volume more effectively or efficiently. Maybe you're battling your competitors. So right off the bat, it's important to understand, like, do we have goals for this brand for running a promotion? Again, very simple, foundational, but you have to start there. And then do we have shopper goals? Are we trying to raise awareness among our shoppers? Are we trying to influence their behavior or change their behavior? Are we trying to get new shoppers? Are we trying to retain or grow existing shoppers? Are we trying to change a shopper's behavior? These are basic concepts, but they're all different, and each one is going to potentially impact and change the type of offer, or how you're going to, the value of your offer, or what you're going to promote. And Sarah, you've worked on the retail side of our business in the past, and so what are some retailer-based objectives that a brand might also have and that leads them to run a promotion?
Yeah, Bill, I mean, there's really so many to think about, and some of the obvious ones are here up on the screen, but we can also think about that maybe a brand might have just gotten distribution at a retailer, and this might be for the very first time. Maybe they have new products on the shelf at that retailer. So running promotions can help to support that new distribution. That kind of hits at that third bullet that we have here as well, where justifying to a retailer that shelf space that they've allocated to you is really worth it, and you're continuing to keep products moving along. But then there's other reasons. I can think of a bunch of reasons why a brand may have a goal of driving shoppers to specific retailers. Perhaps sales are down and a brand's at risk for losing shelf space, maybe even an entire distribution at that retailer. So they need to have a goal in place to help move as much volume as possible. Maybe another reason I've seen happen is that a retailer is offering some kind of support or value or incentive to a brand. And in return, that brand must demonstrate that they're making efforts to drive traffic. So we see this in trade funds all the time. So while some people may think that the motivation behind a promotion is purely based on the brand's needs, or maybe even the shopper's needs, they can just as easily be based on a retailer's needs.
Exactly. And given all this, you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, well, that's all great and wonderful, but all I need to do then is just, if I put a coupon out there, it's going to hit all these goals, right? Like I can just put a coupon out there and, people are going to try my product, or more people are going to get more households, or going to raise awareness, support, right? Well, probably not right. Probably wrong. Just, as there's numerous objectives mentioned here, there's numerous promotion types, numerous promotion variables, promotion stages, that need to be considered and leveraged properly. We're going to touch on all of those here throughout this presentation. But first, I just quickly want to go back to the point about influencing shopper behavior. Sarah, we often hear people say things about subsidization, that most coupon redemption is just subsidization. I'm going to end up giving a discount to someone who is already going to buy. Is that true? I mean, what do we think about subsidization? What do you think?
Yeah, that Bill, maybe it's not entirely true. That sure, there's plenty of subsidization that occurs that's hard to prevent with many promotion methods, some more than others. But even for those where maybe we can't control it, our studies do show that there's plenty of impact on shopper behavior. For example, we ran surveys monthly and annually and talked to thousands of shoppers out there in the wild, out there with their shopping carts. And we actually targeted coupon users specifically. We didn't target coupon users specifically. We talked to all shoppers, just your everyday grocery shoppers, you and me, we talked to. And among those shoppers, we really
I didn't get surveyed. They didn't talk to me. I'm upset.
Well, Bill, that's because you're special.
All right.
But we did ask if there was coupons that were used, and if so, then we asked them lots of questions about how they used the coupons, why they used them, when they used them. And in our recent studies, we've actually seen a lot of really cool metrics that have been really impactful. We actually found that 35% bought more than they usually would if there was a coupon present. This is often a goal for many brands, to train shoppers to buy more, to really expand their basket sizes, to get them to load up, which may take them out of market for competitors, or it could even get them used to buying higher quantities. So we want to get them hooked on buying higher quantities. And then similarly, we saw this result where 1 out of 4 bought sooner than we anticipated from our shopper study. If you're a brand that has a key timing need, maybe around purchase, this can be a benefit. Perhaps you have a product with a seasonal time period and shoppers don't usually buy outside that window. You and your competitors all kick into high gear at the same time, and everyone's scrambling to promote. This is what I like to call a lot of promotions noise. But what if the right offer can actually get some shoppers to buy in advance of that seasonal period? That way you can kind of break through some of that noise. You might be able to secure these shoppers, and maybe they won't be considering your competitor because they've already stocked up on your item. There are many reasons why a brand or retailer might want someone to buy sooner than they had planned to. Another result that we saw from our 2022 shopper behavior study was that 31% said that they bought an alternate product with the brand than they had planned to when a coupon was present. So it significantly changed their behavior. And if you look at the last one here, we saw that nearly 30% said that they had bought a particular brand that they maybe not have otherwise purchased. So we love to see trials, we love to see switching, and these are 2 key goals for many brands, and it absolutely works. So it's really important to understand that we aren't just subsidizing. And if it's done correctly, really brands can likely achieve higher numbers than these if they're well thought out and well planned.
Thanks, Sarah. Those are all great points. And there's more. These we just picked some. In fact, one that just came to mind right now as we were thinking about this that I think we'll see grow is people who say that they switched back to a brand that they bought previously because of a coupon. We've seen that some noise there right now, and that could be really key in the current environment. As you know, we've got a lot of situations with out of stocks and price increases and things like that, and people maybe not promoting because of some of those. And you know, those brands may lose people to private label, or you know, or to other brands, and coupons and promote the right promotions, I should say, you know, can potentially win some of those people back later on. So, but we just wanted to highlight a few of these. And so let's move on to the next section. What have we got, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really are thinking about what does success look like. And you know, when I think about this, it seems pretty simple on the surface. And at least some brands that I talk to seem to think so as well. High redemption rates should equal success, right? Shouldn't everyone get a trophy, Bill?
Everybody wins. No, this isn't a participation trophy, so it's not necessarily wrong, you know, to think that high redemption might equal success, but you need to know how to measure that if it's success. But it's definitely not the only measure either. You know, and how are you going to establish success, and what are your metrics, and how, you know, how do you know if it's a good rate?
Right, absolutely. So when we consider promotion, brands really need to be asking themselves, how do you measure success? Thinking about those KPIs that they set forth for their brand and actually measuring against those things, right?
Yeah, I mean, as it says right there, measurability matters, and setting realistic goals. You know, we sometimes have seen a lot of brands set very unrealistic goals because they either don't know, or they're, you know, they're being optimistic. And that's not an insult or a critique, but it's just it's tricky. But it's equally important. But you know, how can a brand do that? I mean, how can you set expectations?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And I think the first thing is really understanding what has worked, not worked in the past, and looking at that history.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I mean, that's where I start when I work with brands. You know, I mean, unless you've never run a promotion before, looking back at your own history is extremely valuable. What kind of promotions have you run in the past, and when, and where, and how did you run them, and what were the variables? You know, they may be very directly translatable to what you're trying to do now, but they may also not be. I mean, what if if you're a brand that has a whole bunch of flavors or sublines or varieties or sizes and things like that, if the promotions you ran in the past were always good on that entire line, and now you decide, hey, I'm gonna run on one of my key varieties this time, I'm just going to focus my coupon on that. If you expect that you're going to get the same kind of response rate for that coupon as you did in the past, you may be disappointed, or depending on what product that is in your set, you know, you might exceed expectations. I mean, who knows? But it's really important to understand, not just, hey, when we've done this method in the past, we've gotten XYZ response, but understanding, you know, exactly the details of what went into that prior promotion, and does that translate into what you're going to do now? Or if not, you know, how do you adjust it? And on the topic of history, you can also look at historical industry trends, and that's something, again, our team is very close to, and we talked about that presentation we've got coming up. You can look at category benchmarks. You know, what are the average redemption rates, say, for my category, or the distribution and redemption shares by method? You know, if it's a digital coupon, or if it's an old school Sunday newspaper FSI, or many of the other dozens of, you know, promotion methods. You know, what are the averages and the you know, standards for those? Or, you know, what are the average face values or purchase requirements, promotion lengths? We've listed a few here. There's more variables, but if you don't have a lot of history, you can at least start by looking at some of the industry trends that can give you a benchmark of, okay, well, here's what other, you know, products and brands have seen when they've done this, and maybe we'll get something similar. And then, of course, other things about your product category as well. You know, your percent ACV distribution, your market share, your competitors, your price gaps. I mean, how does percent ACV distribution impact a coupon redemption rate or performance or success? Well, if let's say you decide you're going to run an East Coast promotion, and you all over the East Coast with whatever method you choose, but on the East Coast, you're only in a couple of retailers. If this is a non-retail specific offer, people are going to take your coupon to stores and not find it. And you can't really redeem a coupon if you don't have a product to redeem it on. So understanding, hey, in the areas where I'm going to promote, how deep am I in the different retailers there? Does it make sense to run a promotion that can be redeemed anywhere, or should I be doing something retailer specific? And same thing with, your market share or your strengths or weaknesses versus your competitors, your price gaps. We'll talk a little bit more about pricing on another slide, but there's all of that. And then there's other factors as well. The retailer footprint with promotions. Certain retailers, there may be more or less usage of certain methods in different retailers, depending on, the area, things like that. We know from our work with brands that there are regional differences to certain methods. So there may just be, your brand could be very, very popular in a given area, but consumers just don't respond to certain method types in those markets. And so understanding that, if you've got that information available to you, can also help understand whether this, your promotion is going to redeem high or low. Then there's things we call redemption drivers. And some of those are things we can control and some are not controllable. And let's take a look at those.
Absolutely. So when we think about promotions, we often talk about those redemption drivers, things that can impact how our promotion will redeem. But Bill, what are some of the factors that are within our control?
Sure, we've talked about some of them already. Think about them like levers, or buttons you can push when you're thinking about setting up your promotion. So timing. When am I going to run my promotion? Am I going to run it in the summer or the winter? We'll get more into timing later in this presentation, but that those things can, or in relation to when competitors run or key holidays or events. And then duration. Am I going to allow this offer to run for a week, a month, half a year? There are certain promotion types where you might have a 1-year expiration period, and they're just distributed in different ways or at different times. Coupon inclusivity is a really important one. What do I mean by inclusivity? Well, think about, is your coupon inclusive or exclusive? I just alluded to this previously. So is your coupon going to be good on a whole bunch of products that you have, or is it going to be good on a single one? Is it good on all of your flavors, or is it only available on your new diet lemon mustard salmon flavor, which no one's going to redeem?
Interesting flavor profile.
I mean, it's one of my favorites, but so it's, but joking aside, it's really, really important. Sometimes people don't realize that if you make a subtle change to, which products your coupon is good on, it can make a huge difference. And then of course, face values and purchase requirements. I'm sure there's no question about, or a misunderstanding about how those can impact, but also again, where the promotion runs, where it doesn't run. And then depending on the method you're running, there's other things, like you may be running a method where you have some creative elements, and what you show or what you say. Do you show let's just say you have a condiment, do you show it on some food, like on a sandwich or on a hot dog, or do you just show the product packaging? And then, the size of it and the number of other offers that are going to run with that. If you distribute a whole bunch of offers at the same time, they may cannibalize each other. And so understanding that. So there's a whole bunch. And then, but of course, there are things that we have little to no control over, Sarah, and some of them may seem silly, but can you talk through some of these?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we think about drivers where they're really outside of our control and that really, we can capitalize on it, but oftentimes we just have to double down and focus on the areas that we can control that you just walked us through. But I mean, we can't control the weather. I can't control that a natural disaster is going to happen, and I can't really plan promotions around that. The economy as well. I mean, that's a constant moving target, and inflation rates are constantly moving, and having to keep up with some of those trends can be absolutely exhausting. And then I want to come back to the shopper because I have a little story I'd like to share, poking personal fun at myself. But the competition in the brand, trying to keep up with all of the crowded shelf space and the noise happening and your competition. And then lastly, the trends of what's hot and what's not, and everything happening on social media and influencing shoppers and getting clicks. Again, those are really outside of our control. But going back to the shopper, I mean, when we talk about all of the things outside of our control, I would say sometimes the shopper seems like the most largest wild card. And earlier in the week, I'm all, oh, I'm not doing sugar. And, my mother-in-law cooks this meal and everything's no sugar and no sugar this, no sugar that. And my husband and I are eating healthy this week. And then just maybe 30 minutes ago before this call, I was scarfing down those Reese's Easter's eggs that we all love. So really
Oh, I want one of those.
those are good. But really the shoppers needs and sometimes their dietary restrictions are quite literally changing from day to day. So keeping up with those can be exhausting. So we really, really just need to focus on the things that are within our control, being proactive and vigilant against those, and keeping in mind that maybe there are some ways that we can really measure performance and go after an offer, which and set up offers appropriately, which I think Bill leads us into our next slide.
Yeah, and I've got a bunch to say here, and so I'm going to try to go fast, but just in the essence of time. But so what can you really measure? And it depends on a lot of things: the data, the method that you're using, the amount of effort you want to put into it. Might sound silly, but it makes a difference. And there's a few other factors. So again, at the most basic level, we can measure redemption rate and redemption units. That's pretty straightforward. And as we mentioned, but though you need to have something to benchmark those against. So if you get a redemption rate of 5 or 0.5 or 25, you need to have some way to know whether that number is a success or not. So make sure you establish some kind of benchmark against that, prior history, industry trends, et cetera. We usually look at, and brands will look at their cost also to run the promotion, the redemption and handling costs, and maybe compare those against a budget. Just remember, those aren't the only costs. You should factor in other things like distribution costs when you can. They can make a big difference. If you only look at redemption rate and redemption costs, you might find, for example, that one promotion type moves 3 times as much volume as another at twice the cost. So maybe, hey, for twice the cost, I can move 3 times the volume. Maybe that's a good deal for you, depending on your situation. You might consider that a success. But what if you had to spend 10 times more in distribution costs to get that, 3 times the volume? Then you may or may not view that as a success. That may change the game for you. So when you start adding in all of these other factors, like maybe your distribution cost, any other production costs, your artwork costs, whatever you have, then you can start to look at things like cost per unit moved and compare different methods. You can try to level the playing field a bit more. So for example, if improving efficiency is a key goal, then understanding cost per unit move might be really helpful. And similarly, it can tell you things that redemption alone can't. If one tactic, again, costs a whole lot more than another, but the CPUM might actually be better, meaning that when that more expensive method or promotion is affordable, that may be the way to go. And it can also help you think about things like, the cost to move a unit versus your margins, and your profitability. From there, it starts to get a little more complicated. People usually want to talk about things like incrementality, and that can be really difficult to measure, especially with a lot of the more traditional offer types where a redemption of an offer isn't necessarily tied directly to a particular shopper. You might not be able to read that data. So then you don't know if that person has bought before or bought more than they normally would have. So when you want to do incrementality studies on those types of methods, they usually require some kind of complicated analysis or outside help, and maybe some analysis specifically with a particular retailer or some assumptions. With digital offers, you can get closer to that, because you can, in many cases, look at things like, the different buyers who responded or know who you distributed it to, and then if they responded or not, and what they've purchased before. So that can get really fun and interesting. And then, of course, ROI is a big one. Everybody always wants to know ROI. And that requires, again, more specific data. Sometimes we're asked to help with that, but then brands are sensitive and they don't want to share their margins or other financial information for competitive reasons. They hold that tight. So we can't always help with that. But the point is that you can work towards an ROI calculation if you've got the right data and information in hand. And then, of course, you can look at some other things. I'll get off this slide here in just a second, but you can look at overall sales volume during a promotion. For example, if you have Nielsen or IRI or other similar data, we know there's some people who will see a promotion and maybe even clip it, but then make the purchase without redeeming it. So, that's a really interesting thing, but not, you can't see that in the redemption data, obviously, because they didn't redeem. But There's an advertising factor there. And additionally, you could have a shopper who redeems a coupon good on a single purchase, but buys 2 or 3 products as a result. And so the volume is actually higher than what the redemption would tell you. So you might be able to do some kind of analysis on the overall sales volume during, pre, during, and post a life cycle of an offer. Again, like measuring any type of advertising impact, that can be tricky, but there are ways to try to get to that. And you can try to look at those things. So and understand what your promotion accomplished in terms of redemption numbers and then other things. So okay, that's a mouthful. So let's move on and see what we've got next.
Yeah, so this next section is really fun. We kind of nerd out about this promotions methods and such over here at Inmar. But Bill, how do we think about what promotion method would make the most sense?
Yeah, this is always fun and challenging to think about. Something that we work on quite a lot. So let's roll right into it.
And really, when we think about it, it's not just one singular thing to think about. It's a multitude of different variables that really go into it to influence the direction you should decide to go when you're thinking about the different methods. So Bill, the first one seems a little obvious where, clearly we need to think about the budget and how it's going to impact a promotion, but how should we think about that?
Yeah, it's obvious and may seem, again, foundational or too simple, but right. I mean, the more budget you have, the more you can put into a promotion, right? I mean, but just knowing how much you have to spend can immediately help you narrow down options, especially, if, let's say somebody who hasn't run a lot of promotions in the past. I mean, if you've got $10,000 to spend, you're going to have a very different set of options in front of you than if you have 100,000 to spend, or, if you have $1 million to spend. And yes, sometimes there are $1 million promotions. Brands really need to have a realistic, idea right from the get-go in terms of, what they are or aren't going to be able to do within a given budget. So yes, the budget's going to determine what you can do within a promotion, but it's also, right off the bat, it's going to tell you what types of promotions you can run. And Sarah, calling on your retail background again, retailer support needs, also need to be considered.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does. And if a brand maybe doesn't have a specific retailer need, then they can certainly run whatever type of offers that they want. But more likely than not, they probably need to support a specific retailer. And we've seen such an evolution with this digital transformation that has severely been accelerated due to COVID. And so more than likely, a lot of retailers are requiring some additional activity around maybe their digital program or whatever the use case may be. And we did touch on some of these reasons earlier, but really the choice of method becomes a little bit more focused if that retailer is directing you in that way. So brands in that case might want to consider an offer type that's distributed specifically inside the stores of that given retailer. The digital program, like I just said, that runs directly alongside the retailer. And it doesn't mean that the brand has to only run those offer types, but it is a specific retailer that needs special consideration. So brands really need to be thinking about how they will handle that within their promotion mix and their planning.
Exactly. And agility is another interesting one and important to understand. If you and I were working on a promotion right now, Sarah, that needs to run next Thanksgiving, we've got plenty of time to figure out what method and how to get that planned and locked in, executed, whatever we need to do. But that's not all. We don't always have that luxury. Sometimes you need to run a promotion just a couple of months out, or sometimes we hear I need to run a promotion as soon as absolutely possible. And so then some method types just aren't going to be, they're not going to make sense. I mean, if you want to run an instant redeemable, which if you don't know what that is a one of the coupons right on your product that you can peel off. You find it in the store, you peel it off and redeem it at the time of purchase. Think about just the logistics of that. That is something that needs to be printed and created somewhere. If you don't have them already in-house, and you need to get them done, there's going to be a lead time to get those printed. Then you need to get them from wherever they're printed to wherever your products are. That could be at your factory. They could already be at a distribution center. Or they may already be in the stores. I mean, sometimes we're putting those on right at shelf. And so you need to get them there, and then somebody's got to apply them, whether that's done by a machine at a factory or all the way down to somebody doing them one by one by hand. If you've only got a month to get that done, that's probably not realistic. And then depending on, what type of method, you might be working with a certain publisher or provider and they have lead times or constraints. And then finally, agility can also be the ability to, whether or not you're going to need to adjust the offer while it's in market or at the last minute. Do you want to be able to increase the length of time or pull it if your budget is getting killed or something else happens? So some things you can't pull from market once they're out there, other things you might be able to. And so understanding, your needs and, and how to be agile, they can all make a huge difference in what method makes the most sense. And these last two on the slide here, I think are easier to talk about with some visuals. So let's just hop right to the next one. So depending on where you are on this page, and just look through each of these 6 areas, I'm not going to talk through all of them, but just give you some examples. Depending on what you're trying to accomplish, can determine what type of promotion or promotions you need to run. Whether you're thinking about something like a big mass vehicle or mass promotion across as many markets and retailers as possible, all the way down to, potentially a one-to-one targeted promotion where you're trying to reach a very specific shopper, possibly in a very specific place, and only get promotions in front of them. And so this ties back directly to some of the goals we talked about already in this presentation. If your overall, and let's just go through a couple, if your overall goal is awareness, think about that. You just want, you need to get people aware of your product. You may not even care who they are. I need to get eyeballs. So then running, the bigger, more broad mass vehicles is likely key. But think about some of the ones more to the right. Repeat, right? If you want to get somebody to return, or if you're trying to drive loyalty among specific people, then you probably need to know whether or not they're already buying. Or not. You need to, you may want to focus in on somebody that has just maybe redeemed one of your offers and now you want to get them to redeem again, or increase their purchase behavior. So in those cases, you might need to think about more specific offers where you might have some ability to target in and hit certain people. Electronic checkout offers can be targeted and triggered based on a shopper's, what they've just purchased or their history, and same with digital offers and load to card type offers. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but that kind of gives you an idea of, to give you an idea of where you are and what you're trying to accomplish can really drive and steer the offers. Probably don't want to run a mass offer if you're way over to the right, and you may not want to run a one-to-one offer if you're all the way to the left. So it's understanding kind of how to apply different offers to these. And finally, one last thing on this section, Sarah, one I love talking about, but I'll let you kick it off. Can you take us through what we call the shopper phases?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about the end-to-end journey, I mean, sometimes it looks more, instead of linear, sometimes it looks more like a circle in a closed loop. But when we think about the pre-shop tactics, this is when I'm talking with my husband about how we're going to eat clean this week, but then also how we're going to get our hands on some Reese's Easter eggs as well. When we're kind of meal planning. Yeah. And at this stage, we're really thinking, marketers can be thinking about FSIs, direct mailers, media. You might even be thinking about a digital offer. But a lot of times, this is really a tactic to reach us as we're thinking about going in the store before we actually arrive, when we're, meal planning and such. And then when we think about the in-store tactics, this is when I'm out there in the wild with my shopping cart and grabbing a bunch of things that may or may not be on my list. So how can we be strategic about that? And really, we can think about tactics like handouts, instant redeemables, which Bill walked us through just now, tear pads. All of those are very key tactics for in the store. And then post-shop tactics, and this is where I've arrived back home, I'm looking at my receipt, maybe I'm looking at my savings, and this is where you guys are continuing, the brands are continuing to engage after post-purchase, where you're really trying to influence maybe some future purchases as well. So this will be some tactics to think about, or Catalina in-pack, on-pack. And then lastly, digital is an interesting one because it can really be infused at any point and at any stage of the shopper journey. But this is really applicable more to any shopping phase, really, where you can leverage it at the pre-shop. You can leverage it even in-store if it's geo-tracked. But really, digital offers can be found on retailer loyalty emails, store galleries, mobile apps. So, Bill, it really feels like understanding the phases can be critical in some instances. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I'll give an example that'll hit it home to make it crystal clear. So a number of years back, I was working with a brand, and they were wondering why performance of many of their offers were low. They just were not meeting expectations. In some cases, they were just really, really kind of crummy, miserable, whatever term you want to use. And so we took a look at them, and they engaged us to try to help figure that out. And everything seemed fine with how they were executing the offers they were running. As far as on the execution standpoint, the values and the purchase requirements seemed appropriate, similar to their category and things like that. And there was nothing wrong with their timing or anything else we could see, just from their data. And we looked at some category things and kind of started to get an idea of what might be going on, but we pushed them and asked and started, just really asking them about their brand, their shopper, what do you know about your shopper, and what do you know about who you're trying to reach? And it was at that point that they said, we've figured that out, that most of our shoppers are shopping on impulse. They make the decision to buy at store. They are not necessarily making planned purchases. And bingo, there it was. And so why do I say that? Well, this brand, knowing this, were very focused on pre-shop methods. They were trying to hit people during the planning phase, but that's not when people think about or consider this product. I know I can think of products that when I walk through the store, I never put them on my shopping list, but when I see them, you're talking about the Easter eggs there. There are certain snack cakes or, candy bars or beef jerky things that I don't necessarily put on my shopping list, but when I see them, sometimes it's like, I must have this, must buy Twinkies and can't refuse. And I can't leave the store without them. So the point is that that if people aren't thinking about that, like an offer on those products may not even appeal to me. I may not even pay attention in the pre-shop phase. But if I see something in store that could, maybe make me switch or think about that product, it could make all the difference. So really, again, that is one example, but just understanding who your shopper is and where you need to reach them versus where you're trying to reach them or where you think you want to reach them, that can make a difference in some cases. And before we move on to this, before we move on to the next section and how we're doing on time, okay, we're okay. Let's quickly address or look at some of the shopper stats we see about these phases. So starting with the pre-shop phase, these are from our shopper study. So 63% of online shoppers, so those are folks who are making their list online with their retailer and then either picking it up or having it delivered. They started building their order before the actual day of purchase. So again, think about the pre-shop phase. There's a time period where they're making their list and they're thinking about things. And if you catch their attention with an offer, during that time, you might get them to put you on the shopping list. And 90% of in-store shoppers brought a shopping list on their most recent trip. And you might be saying, well, why are you talking to me about shopping lists? I mean, who doesn't make a shopping list? Who cares? But what we found is that if you're, I talk about this one a lot, but it's important when we're talking about groceries, is that if you get on the shopping list, there's a high likelihood that your product is going to get purchased. And think about it. If you put bread on the shopping list, you're probably not going to leave without bread unless there's just no bread available in the store. You need it and you're going to buy it. And so if you get your brand on the shopping list, there's a good chance you're going to get purchased, or something in your category is going to get purchased. And so, and if 90% of shoppers are doing that, that's a lot. And that we've found that almost 80% of shoppers regularly check coupon sources before making a grocery purchase or making a list, and that they're using coupons to determine what's on that list. So you can do the math there. If a lot of people are looking at coupons, and then many of them are using that to make a list, and most people are bringing a list, and if you're on the list, you're going to get purchased. You can see where I'm going with this. So, the pre-shop phase can be critical. And then, of course, Sarah, there's in-store.
Absolutely. So when we think about what shoppers are doing in store, one thing's for sure, they continue their search for savings once they get in the store. In fact, what we found that 1/3 of shoppers are using the apps while shopping. Over 1/3 are visiting the retailers' websites looking for deals and savings as they're going up and down aisles. This last data point on clippers and non-redeemers, where 23% clipped an offer but did not redeem because they found a better deal in store, it just reinforces that we all know to be true that incentives really work. And they work because in store, you can afford the opportunity to reach customers while they're shopping and change their behavior in the store.
Yeah, and then just real quick on post shop. So a couple of different kind of thoughts here. So almost 50% of shoppers follow brands and or retailers on social media. And when we look at, rebates, we haven't mentioned those much yet, but it's another type of promotion. 44% of shoppers who used rebates on a recent grocery purchase found the rebate on social media. And you think about it, rebate is something that you do and engage with post shop. You've bought a product and now you're going to be filling that out and take, redeeming that rebate. So it's after a purchase has been made. And then of course, we've mentioned electronic checkout offers, which are the ones that are spit out at the point of sale and handed to you when you get your receipt. Among the dozens of coupon types and methods, promotion methods that are in market each year, electronic checkout offers are about the fourth most redeemed, again, out of dozens of types. So certainly significant. And that's been for a number of years running, which means that there's a lot of people getting coupons and promotions at the time of checkout and then looking at those afterwards and then going back and redeeming later. And again, the key there is that those coupons aren't random. They are triggered based on something that they've just purchased or have purchased previously. So they're in targeted to some extent, and then they're making people still stay engaged post shop. So and across all these phases, shoppers are looking for promotions and savings. It's very clear, and it's just critical to understand how and where to reach your target audience along these phases.
Absolutely. So now when we think about something more specific and more laser focused, the coupon value, how much should an offer be worth?
Yeah, there isn't necessarily a rule or an exact method, as much as people wish that there was, to determine the best value or purchase requirement. Because again, there's so many variables, but there are definitely things you can be thinking about and to consider to help you, steer you in the right direction. So, okay, and in the essence of time, I'm going to try to go fast. There are a lot of factors that influence it. Whether you're promoting a new item or as an established one, probably want to run a very different value. If you're going to run a very aggressive offer, if you're trying to, crush it in a market or, go after, you've got a competitive issue versus an efficient offer, you're just trying to move some efficient volume. Many of the things we've already talked about today are going to influence the discount and the offer. But when thinking about offers and values, one thing that's really important, and I'll give you an example of how this can be it can cause issues for some shoppers, is to be careful not to erode your brand equity. And that's done by having strong values and maybe too frequently. And what does that mean? So I'll give an personal example, and I don't want to upset anyone if these companies, if they happen to be listening today, or anyone who works in this category, but this is just a personal example. Again, not a professional one or a legal one per our disclaimer. But think about the soda aisle. And I try not, and there's somebody listening to this presentation I know that who's going to give me a hard time about soda, but I am drinking less soda these days. But when I do buy it, you go to that aisle. If you go in a grocery store, when there are two major players in that category, and one of them is almost always on deal, whether it's coupons or trade deal, it's almost always on sale. And then the next week, the other one is on deal. And some of these deals are pretty aggressive, where you're getting the product, for half the cost of what the shelf price is. For me personally, it's gotten to a point where I know this pattern. I've seen it enough times that I know if I go to the store and these products, if I'm wanting to buy these and they are not on sale, I'm not going to buy it. I'm going to wait. I'll go either, when I happen to go to another store where it's on sale, or I'll wait till the next week when it's on deal. And when I look at the actual normal price of this product, I feel almost insulted, because it's like, how are you going to ask me to pay twice the price that I paid last week? And so, the brand equity gets eroded. So you need to be really careful about that. If you run too often or too high of a value, you can eventually make people want to only pay the discounted value. Another key thing is to consider, what's going on at shelf when you run your promotion, what we call trade stacking. And that can have a huge, huge, huge impact on the performance. It has ability to blow a budget or give too deep of a discount. So you need to really think about, how much of a discount are you going to be giving, and what's it going to do to your budget if you are aligned with a trade deal or not. So you're going to be really careful with that. And then think about the fact that afterwards, you may also have something running on one of the cashback type companies. And so somebody may be getting even yet another deal. And we'll talk more about that here in a second. But one of the things you really need to figure out is what your net unit cost is. This is one of the things that we do, and then adjust your promotion based on that. So Sarah, can you take us through a few points to illustrate net unit cost? Because I think it's really critical.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really need to be thinking about non-promoted price, and this would be the regular price of a product without any additional discounting. And we also need to be thinking about promoted price, and this would be if the product has a temporary price reduction with discounted savings. Another key metric when considering net unit cost would be the consumer promotion. And this is if a manufacturer's coupon is active and it can be used in conjunction with a promoted price to drive further discounted savings. And then we also can be mindful of the net unit cost. And this would be if we take the total discount of number 2, which was our promoted price, and or number 3, which is our consumer promotion, paid by a shopper at the time of purchase. So when we think about all these things combined, what's really the bottom line? Bill, can you walk us through maybe a real life example to make this a little bit more straightforward?
Yeah. Let's just say we've got a $5 product and we decide that we're going to run 20% discount, which is a nice basic rate. Many brands might use that percentage as a starting point. Again, it's not a hard science there, but that's just, kind of a general norm. And that would mean we're going to offer a $1 discount. So the consumer is going to pay $4 for our $5 product. And that seems reasonable, not too aggressive, but enough to get a reaction. But let's say that we weren't paying attention and didn't realize there was going to be that at shelf trade deal going on, and that the price at shelf was going to be reduced to $2.99. Well, if the shopper uses our coupon at that time, now they're paying $1.99 for our $5 product. Is that okay? I can't answer that question. It depends. There's so many variables. But if that price point kills your margin, may not be a good thing, unless you're, just being super aggressive and trying to accomplish something else. And then again, to further complicate things, like what if there's another 50 cents off on Ibotta, for example, or Fetch, or any one of these other, services where you can run promotions. Now the shopper's paying $1.49 for our $5 product. And again, there may be reasons why you want to do this, but there may be reasons why you don't. And so thinking about, and don't think that shoppers won't figure that stuff out. There's enough coupon savviness out there, and shopper blogs and sites that direct people to these. And so they will figure it out. So it's really important to think through not just the value that you think you want to give, but what else is going to be going on that could make that value a lot greater than you were intending. A couple of other quick considerations when setting values. It's beneficial not only to know your promoted and non-promoted price, but also those of your competitors, and potentially by market or region. If you've got a market where your non-promoted everyday price is already lower, say, than your competitor's promoted price, then you may not need to offer as much of a rich discount. So understanding what the other price points are in market, and again, that can vary by market, can make a difference. And you can tailor your values. And there's other things that will drive that as well, BDI and CDI and other things. And lastly, real quick, I mentioned purchase requirement. That's directly related to this as well. In our original example, we were wanting to give a 20% discount off a $5 product. And so we give $1 off. But if we change the coupon to off 2, it's no longer a 20% discount. I've seen countless brands make this mistake where they're like, oh, let's change the purchase requirement, get people to buy more. Great. And we're giving $1, so that's still a good value. It's going to make sense. But they don't realize that, wait, we just asked people to buy $10 worth of product to save $1. That's only a 10% discount now. So depending on your goals, and who you're targeting, that could easily fail. It might work, it may not. But you got to consider all of these things. And it may seem obvious, but we see it get overlooked quite a lot. So balancing your face value and your purchase requirement with your price and how much people are actually having to buy and everything else going on is really key. So that's probably enough about values, and we've only got a few more minutes left. So let's jump into, we've got one section left. Let's just get through it.
Yeah, let's tie this into a bow. So we just talked about running a coupon, how to measure it, what method to use, and how to think about setting values. But how should we run this offer?
Yeah, it's an important question. Again, a little complex, but there are factors that we can look at. And in some cases, you may not have any specific needs or timing needs and you just need to promote, and maybe as soon as possible. But then there are some things you would still want to consider even in that case. And then there are other instances where making it, may make sense to align with certain things, and that can be critical. So, here are a few things to think about. Do you have key sales or drive periods that you want to align with? I've got a brand that I work with that has key drive periods throughout the year where they absolutely must move as much volume as possible. They have a perishable product. They need to get it off the shelf. And so they are just crushing volume at certain times throughout the year, and that's the way they promote. And that may not make sense for other, products or brands. It goes back to what we've talked um, about, all of these other factors and understanding your goals and what you're trying to do. Seasonality can also be really important. If you have a product you're trying to sell that has this really seasonal and you sell it off season, that may not work. I mean, here's a silly example. If you're selling ice melting crystals and you try to put out an offer good on a multiple purchase in the middle of July, probably not going to do much. And that's it's a silly example that I'm sure the ice crystal companies would never do that, but they probably want to run in the dead of winter. But you may also be justified to run outside of a seasonal swing. I mean, if you're an ice cream brand or frozen pops, you probably think, okay, summer is probably your key time when you get the most volume, and that's probably a great time to run an offer. But you can run an offer for those types of products off season.
Not in my household, Bill. You need to run ice cream all year long in my household.
Well, then I guess those off-season promotions will work. I'll let those brands know.
Yeah,
but the point being that seasonality could make or break it, and then there might be reasons why you want to promote off of your seasonality. So, and then finally, do you know what's going on with your competitors? Knowing, not you obviously are promoting for competitive reasons in some cases, but knowing when your competitors are going to promote can make a big difference. If you get preempted, meaning they run a promotion right before yours, that could kill your promotion. And so understanding where and when they're going to do things can really make sense as far as when you pick the timing for your promotion. And Sarah, we've got one slide left. We're almost out of time. Let's just try to fly through it. Hang on with us here, folks, if you can.
Yeah, so this is just where many brands have seasonality. There's different ways to look at this with overall industry trends for distribution and redemption. Here we're showing on this chart some monthly index of each. In total, we also broke out this category by food and non-food. And you can also see that there's some definite patterns, peaks and valleys throughout the year.
Yeah, and there's more to say about this, but in the essence of time, we'll keep going. But there are definitely, again, if you don't have history and data or things to think about, there are industry trends that you can look at to understand. So that brings us to the end. I mean, we've kind of recapped and we've got some takeaways here. I think, they're all just, kind of recapping the key things that we were talking about as far as, understanding, why you want to run your promotion, how to measure success, which method makes the most sense, how much should your offer be worth, and what's the best time to publish. So if people have questions, I don't know, certainly, I don't think we'll have time to answer them here, but they can submit them and we can get back to them. And just two more things we want to point out here before the end. We've got a special quick offer for the first 5 people who scan this QR code. If they're interested, the first brand, 5 brands can have a free consultative meeting with our team. We can answer some questions you may have about running promotions or industry trends and things like that. So I'll leave that on the screen here for just a moment. So if you're not in the first 5, I apologize. Obviously, this is something that my team, brands pay us for this type of work, but we wanted to give some folks a chance to engage with us. So again, the first 5, we'll have like a 15 to 20 minute free consultation call, so you can scan this QR code. I'll leave it up here for a few more seconds. And of course, you can reach out if you have questions on this. And then finally,
it sounds like there might be a permissions issue with the QR code. So just know that everyone on the call is going to get a follow-up email afterwards with some of these details as well. And if there's any kinks, we'll make sure that gets worked out.
Okay, and then we're right at time, but Sarah, do you want to just quickly mention this one? And then
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we'd love it if you guys can join us for April 20th, our industry webinar. If you scan this QR code, it'll get you registered. And back to Peter's earlier point, if anyone wanted to be involved in the first 5 for our consultative advisory services, and it looks like the form's not working, we can certainly reach out to the first that requested it and make sure that you still receive that special promotion from us. From Bill and I and the rest of the Inmar Intelligence team, thank you guys so much for joining us today. And we hope to have continued conversations with you throughout the next several weeks. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, guys, we're going to close the room out now. You'll see the recording posted on the Startup CPG Vimeo channel shortly. And you should also be on the lookout for a follow-up email from our team in the next day or so with some additional information and a recap and the deck and all the other things that you're looking for. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.